Planning and Historical. We are having a special called Capital Improvements Budget Informational Session. And so I appreciate y'all being here. If you will bear with me for a second, I will pull up our you know what, we're gonna just call roll after we get started. So what I would like to do now is turn it over to some of the planning department staff. And what you've received recently in your inbox is the PowerPoint that goes along with the presentation you're about to hear. And after this, after Mr. Claxton speaks, we'll have time for questions and answers, and I'll call roll after he finishes his presentation. So Mr. Claxton, it is all yours. Wait.
Good evening, council members. My name is Greg Claxton with the Planning Department. I'm going to talk you through the council request process for the capital improvements budget this year. This is a process we've been running for the last 3 years, I believe. So this is just an update and an overview of what we worked through to help y'all out. The first slide, or the second slide, if you flip over one page, is just a reminder of the role of the capital improvements budget. Any improvement that Metro makes must be included in the CIB. However, inclusion in the CIB does not guarantee funding. So what the CIB does is lays out what Metro could spend money on in the next year for a capital project. In this context, a capital improvement is any building, structure, work, or improvement with an average life over 10 years and a cost greater than $50,000. So that $50,000 threshold is a key part of what we're looking for in terms of what has to be in the CIB. The CIB includes 6 years of projects, but because it's readopted every year, it's only binding on the first year. The other 5 years are simply to sort of lay out, set expectations, and help for planning purposes. I mentioned that inclusion in the CIB doesn't guarantee funding. For funding, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll need some other council action at some point. The major focus is generally general obligation bonds, usually enacted through a capital spending plan. That's where things like school projects, parks, public works projects tend to be funded through. There are also revenue bonds for the Water Services and Sports Authority, 4% funds for kind of office renovation and equipment, and then occasionally there'll be some projects funded through enterprise funds, operating budgets, or federal or state funding. If you'll flip to the next slide, I included this to make the point that while there are a lot of very specific projects in the CIB, things like individual schools, park projects, that kind of thing, a lot of the spending in the CIB is organized around programs. Some of these we do for organizational purposes, such as school renovations or expansions, just making sure those get grouped together. But in a lot of cases, these are collections of much smaller projects. So we don't generally itemize paving projects, sidewalk projects, traffic signals, deferred park maintenance, that kind of thing. They get grouped into these overarching programs. All right, the next slide. At this point, preparing the CIB takes about 9 months out of the year. It starts around this time every year as council members formulate what requests you have for the upcoming CIB. The deadline per council rule is October 31st to submit those. I believe this week you were distributed a list of projects in your district. I'll talk through that spreadsheet in a moment. But that's part of this request cycle, is reviewing what's in there, identifying what you want to keep, and letting us know what you don't think is necessary anymore. We compile those and distribute them to departments, and then by December 16th, we report back to you with either funding assessments or checking for alignment with department master plans. In January each year, departments submit projects, including the council office, to finance, who compiles and presents them to us. In February and March, we assess those projects. In some cases, general services or ITS develop additional cost estimates. And then by the end of April, Planning Commission votes to recommend a prioritized CIB to the mayor. May 15th, the mayor distributes his CIB to council, and then as y'all will recall, by June 15th, the council adopts the CIB with or without amendments. All right, next slide. So in the spreadsheets that were distributed this week, we've listed all of the projects that we have associated with your districts. So far, we've heard of at least one project that was inadvertently left off. If you see any other errors and omissions, let myself or Matthew know. What we're looking for here is for you to take at least a brief look at these projects and let us know for each one, do you want to keep it because you want to consider prioritizing it, or you want to communicate that it's needed, or if you don't feel that that's needed anymore for whatever reason. There's also a place for you to provide additional comments, either on the scope of the project or the need for the project. And then we've got one column where we identify, for a small number of projects, issues that we have or concerns that we have with some of these. These are flagged. We want you to pay particular attention to these if you have one, and to let us know if you want to keep it, give us some feedback for why it's necessary to keep in, or if it's no longer needed. In a lot of cases, these are very small projects below that $50,000 threshold. So that's the kind of thing that we're highlighting. And then at the bottom of the spreadsheet is a place for you to add any new requests that you have. Just let us know the title, description, need, council member comment, that kind of thing. And then last, next slide. Once we get your requests, we kind of do our review in 2 rounds. The first is kind of a quick review to make sure it's complete. Do we understand what you're asking for? Have you told us where the project is? For example, if you say sidewalks on this particular road, do you mean the whole road, which could be 8 miles, or do you mean just a particular block or 2? So letting us know as specifically as you can what you're asking for helps a lot. We also take a look to see if there are existing projects in the CIB that will implement what you're requesting. So adding it in would be duplicative. Once we've done that, we distribute all the projects to departments for things that they would implement. They look at kind of past work that they've done, they check their master plans, and then they develop cost estimates in 3 phases. We also check for alignment with Nashville Next, just so you have some sense of kind of how it fits into the overall planning framework for the county. And then we compile all of that and report back to you all in December. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Claxton. So just a reminder, I'm going to go ahead and just mark our roll up here rather than calling it. So if you would like to ask a question, if you want to line up at one of these, well, just any mic, I guess, and I'll go from my right to left, however we want to do it. But if you want to just go ahead and head to a mic, and I will turn it on from there, hopefully. Ms. Gamble, I believe your mic is on.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a question about how the planning staff selects projects that are, I guess, are within the master plan. I submitted a CIB last year requesting construction of a new library. And I just said for District 3, I didn't specify exactly where in the CIB, but when I got the review back, it had a specific location that was not actually where I was considering. So I guess my question is, if planning designates a particular spot that may not be the best place, according to the council member, is there an opportunity to revise that? Does that stay into play and then I have to submit another location, or how does that work?
Sure. So by and large, except for the planning department's own projects, we don't change what's been submitted by council members or by departments. I believe Matthew forwarded me your email from earlier this week, and we need to take a look at that to see if your request from last year somehow got dropped out. Sometimes there's a couple of different things that could happen that would make that happen. If that's the case, I'll send you a revised spreadsheet. Otherwise, the project that you noticed that's in there is a request from another council member or from the library department themselves. So Yeah, let me look into it and see if I can figure out where that got dropped out. And if it's something that wasn't in there before or got dropped out at an earlier phase, we can work with you to get it resubmitted.
Do we have any other questions? Larry, are you walking to a mic? No? Okay. Any other questions? All right, Council Lady Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We spent 1 year working through a fairly complex prioritization scheme that I think maybe many people felt was too unwieldy to actually work with, but it did at least provide a way to then later justify why one project was chosen and another wasn't. Have we come up with a better alternative to that takes some of the subjectivity out of explaining how projects are chosen?
Councilmember, are you referring to the council's own prioritization scheme?
Yes.
Okay. That is not something that, like, we kind of set up the projects for y'all to respond to, but we aren't involved in setting that scheme out.
Gotcha.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
So, Council Lady Allen, when I became the chair of planning last year, and in talking with the chair of budget, we dropped that complicated Excel point system and bartering system between council members to barter points. It was for a variety of reasons, and I'm happy for us to kind of discuss whether we bring back some sort of prioritization system. But as you mentioned, it was very complex, and quite honestly, I didn't think that it was very fair for council members to barter points and favors and trade with one another to try to get more points for their project for a variety of reasons. And so with that, we did not continue that. It was not something that was set in stone or made a council rule.
So I maybe would just suggest perhaps looking at what was good and what was not good and possibly talking about whether we'd be interested in something. I just, this new council hasn't been through the process yet of sort of seeing what gets chosen and what doesn't, but ultimately you get to a point where you go, how come that library got built and mine didn't? And there's no good way to talk through where the really high priorities are. So I would just ask for the opportunity to try to think through if something less unwieldy could be discussed.
Yeah, I think that'd be great for us to have some more discussion on it when we can kind of come together some more. We do have some time before now in the spring. Just at the end of the day, like you said, the Excel spreadsheet and swapping points around was just not something that I wanted us to get into the ethical complication of swapping
And
points.
I agree on the swapping points, so that sounds like something we would drop. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on CIB? Oh, all right. Let me. Councilman Withers, your mic should be on.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just wanted to follow up on that last discussion a little bit. For things like libraries and parks and things of that nature, the documents that the planning department staff have put together usually reference Nashville Next or things like that. But there is also frequently within departments a facilities master plan. There is a facilities master plan for the library system as well as parks and whatnot. And so that is a really, as we're having future discussions, that might be something to take a deeper dive into if there are particular facilities that council members are interested in, just to really cross-reference those existing documents that we have that are facilities master plans for parks or libraries or whatever, so that we are all aware of how our requests align or not with the departmental priorities as well. So that tends to help if it's already a departmental priority. It helps us to get something done a little bit faster to manage expectations for ourselves and our constituents, and just encourage us to really reference those studies that we already have when we're having this discussion as it unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Withers. I think that's a really good point, is that a lot of the projects are cross-referenced, and maybe that's something that needs to be, that we just need to look at closer to either clarify or do more education of ourselves on. And so it's a good time to remind you that if you have some planning or development, land use, zoning questions, I'm trying to put together an orientation for us. I haven't received any topics that anyone is interested in, so that means that I'll just make it up, but I think that y'all might have some interest that you might want me to get a speaker on, so just another pitch for that. Is there anyone else that has questions on the CIB or the process that we are going through again this year? Okay, seeing none. So a reminder that your list, revisions in the Excel spreadsheet back to planning is due on October 31st. This year, I really want us to do a serious cleanup of the CIB. There are some things that have been submitted in the past that are not necessarily appropriate. You need to keep in mind, we all need to keep in mind that Nashvillians, investors, property owners, our constituents make plans based upon this plan and where we are telling people that we want to make investments. And so this really does not need to be a just pie in the sky wish list and unicorn parks and fairy dust. It needs to be projects that fit the criteria, that are going to be funded in the future, and that we have a plan to do rather than just putting things in there. They need to be serious projects that we feel need to move forward and that fit the criteria for the CIB. So if you have any questions, continue to reach out to Mr. Claxton and Mr. Wilkinson in our office, who wants me to do something else. Sure, go for it.
All right. Just, I guess, a bit of a closing remark. If you want to funnel all your questions to me in the council office, I can then disseminate it out to where it needs to go. So if it needs to go to Maria, if it's a financial question, or if it needs to go to Greg, if it's planning, or I may be able to answer some of those as well. So if you would just send all your questions to me, and then I can send it out where it needs to go. And that should help avoid any confusion and duplicate. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. And I'm gonna run through who I have on the roll real quick. So I have Alan as present, Cash present, Gamble, Hager present, Parker present, Toombs, Van Rees present, Withers present. Is there anybody else on planning? Evans has come in. Anyone else out there? Rutherford, great. Thank you so much. With that, we are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.